I'm just curious about last summer when everybody sort of conceded that there were some bad calls made one way or the other.
In regards to
fishing that didn't
reducing
happen.
the subsistence.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was a good thing, honestly, because
Why?
it was a necessary thing to get fish up to the spawning ground. That's where all the fish come from.
And so you think there's a direct cause and effect?
Absolutely, and I think we'll see that in when that brood deer comes back to spawn. So.
Do you ever hear anything about the hatchery fish sort of screwing up with the natural balance of things?
Well, there's a very minimal number of fish coming out of the hatchery in the white horse. They probably only get 3 or 4% back, and they release probably a couple 100,000 or something like that. But other than that, there's no hatchery in the Yukon. So, yeah.
What about what people say the size of the fish have been shrinking over time? What's your theory about that?
It could be a lot of things. It could be some people up here like to say that it's the nets down below and the drift nets, and it's kind of like big filters with larger nets, and they're taking all the big fish, and the big fish don't get to the spawning grounds. And
what do the people downriver say about that?
I don't think they notice it as much because they're still catching larger sized fish. So.
Oh, it's just that they're not getting upriver.
It's kind of, I mean, nets are big, huge filters, right? So they're getting, the fish are just getting filtered out as they go upstream further and further. So.
Okay.
It's also it could be a matter of ocean conditions. It could be a matter of the headwaters where they're spawning. Probably not so much the spawning grounds, just because there's no major industry or anything that's going to be causing yearly fluctuations in runoff and whatnot. It may freeze down to the gravel and kill all the eggs, or a large majority of them is also a possibility. But when they get out into the ocean, sure, there's all sorts of things that are possible.
Yeah.
Whether they're getting caught in the trawl or the pelagic trawl for the pollock, or whether they're competing more with hatchery fish, because they all kind of go in this. I mean, it's one big feeding pool.
You haven't been able to get any better sense of what's really causing what out there.
They don't know 100%, and they probably never will. But it's because there's way too many variables, but they kind of attribute it to a little bit of each. I mean, there has to be some effect on everything that happens to those fish has an effect on whether they come back and how big they are.
Well,
okay.
I should put my 2 cents in.
Yes, sir. Let's hear it.
My expertise is as the chairman of the House Resource Committee, the state legislature, and I dealt with that. And the commercial effort in districts 1 and 2 during a period, 20 years ago.
And districts 1 and 2 are where?
Districts 1 and 2 are at the mouth. They're
at the mouth, right.
First 2 districts.
Right.
It's highly commercial. And I will give you an example. The quota is 65 to 85,000 fish. Now that's a 20,000 fish separation between the quotas. At the high end, they're supposed to quit fishing. They allowed them for several years to take 110,000 fish. Our quota up here was 2,800 fish, and they started closing us down at 2,000 fish for fear that we would exceed our quota.
So how do you get such an imbalance in the way
There was no balance. They allowed it because everything was commercial down there.
I see.
And the commercial really controlled, at that time especially, controlled the Alaska fishery, both in what I coined the brown water fishery, which was the big rivers of Alaska, and the blue water fishery, which was the ocean fishery.
Do you feel like that's still true?
No, in those days the department, I think, was not only loose, but some people felt that there was some, if not corruption, at least a relationship between commercial fisheries and Department of Fish and Game. In the last decade, I can't say that the department is trying to do a very good job, but they started behind the 8 ball, and they're trying to recover the fishery. So when the subsistence fishery takes more fish than a subsistence user can use, it means that some are going into the market.
Yeah.
And they have no alternative but to limit even some of the fishery by emergency opening and closures and other means They have no alternative if the fish stock are going to survive
Yeah.
to even affect the subsistence fishery. It's not a matter of philosophy of subsistence. It's the philosophy is how many fish you're going to let go to Canada and spawn.
Yeah.
So it's a real tough situation. And to bring the fishery back, you're going to have to take those very, very strong measures. So,
Unfortunately.
yeah, unfortunately. So Alice, it's a tough problem that we have on this river, and it affects everybody.
It sure does.
It affects everybody because there's no commercial. And when I started fishing here in Phil and Alice and the people that showed you Norm, you were a little boy then, but we would catch as many fish as we wanted to catch in the very same eddies that we're fishing today. It was you had to even pull your net sometimes because we were catching too many fish. They were all used, and in this camp, for example, we both sold fish, and both of us have commercial licenses, and put fish up like we're doing there for strips for subsistence and canned fresh fish and the whole thing. And everybody made a little money, even your poor eddies, even people that didn't have fish wheels, and people that just got along. They made $5,000–6,000 a year, and the good eddies and the good wheels would make 30 or 40.
Wow, that's
Now,
real money.
To a person out here, that's all. That's all
You can live on
discretionary
that.
money.
Absolutely.
That's above the living. That's just free money. That's discretionary funds for a new snow machine or whatever. That kind of has dried up. So it's